Thank you. Well, good morning all, and welcome to the Development Management Licensing Committee. And before we go any further, I'll just ask people to go around the table and introduce themselves. I'm Councillor Rick Cheadle. I chair the Planning Committee and represent Buckland-on-Coram.
Councillor Terry South.
Good morning, everyone. I'm David Fairbairn, Head of Legal Services and Monitoring Officer.
Catherine Hall, Democratic Services Officer at West Devon.
Councillor Paul Vashon, representing Okehampton South. I'm subbing for Councillor Mann.
Jeff Moody, Tavistock North.
Councillor Neil Jory, I'm the Councillor for Tamar Ford Ward.
Anne Wakeham, Councillor for Hatherley.
Alistair Cunningham, Councillor for Buckland-on-Coram.
Councillor Steve Guthrie, Councillor for Drew Stainton Ward.
Tony Leach, Okehampton North.
Caroline Mott, Bridgestow.
Richard Geary, Planning Officer, West Devon.
Jacqueline Houselander, Head of Development Management for West Devon.
Thank you very much. Have we apologies for absence?
We've got apologies from Councillor Mann, and Councillor Vashon is substituting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Move to item 3, which is declarations of interest. In accordance with the Code of Conduct, members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests, including the nature and extent of such interests they may have, and any items to be considered at this meeting. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. Items requiring urgent attention, none have been brought to my attention. So we move on to item 5, which is a confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of November. Are you all content with those minutes? Happy for me to accept them? Yes, you are. Thank you very much. We now turn to our legal officer for a quick statement.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to explain the way that decisions are made in planning committees for those who are not necessarily so familiar. The committee's starting point is the statute required to have regard to the policies of the development plan. In this case, the joint local plan and any made neighbourhood plan is the development plan. And decisions are to be made in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations suggest otherwise. Material considerations are those that relate to the use and development of land in the public interest. So anything that doesn't relate to those two things doesn't serve that purpose and is irrelevant. The committee's decision, say, will be made in accordance with the development plan. The rationale is that the development plan is intended to be carefully drafted and considered a statement of policy, published to inform the public of the approach that we've followed when making planning decisions, unless there are good reasons to depart from it. Chairman, I think that's as far as I need to go today.
Thank you very much. We now turn to planning applications. For those that didn't get the email yesterday, one of the applications has been withdrawn, so we only have one on the books this morning, which is 413523, 27 Pounds Park Road, Birralston, householder application for a proposed 2-storey side extension to the dwelling. We have a couple of registered speakers, but before we get to them, I'll turn to the planning officer for his report. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Richard. I'm presenting this one today on behalf of the case officer, Amy Hallett, who unfortunately can't be here today. I have 2 verbal updates to give before we get into the meat of the application. The first is with regards to the National Planning Policy Framework, which was updated by the government last week on Thursday. That happened after the committee report had been written, so we need to provide a quick update. The key points are that the NPPF is relevant upon publication, so we have to consider it. That officers have considered the revisions in the NPPF against this application, and we find that there's nothing in there that alters the recommendation we're making. As a quick note, the refusal reason notes paragraph 135 of the NPPF. This is a paragraph that hasn't changed in wording or numbering, but just for the record, the dates will have to be changed on the refusal reason to 2024. Second verbal update I'd like to give is from South West Water. South West Water wrote to the case officer on the 12th of December to alert them to the presence of an easement to the rear of 27 Pounds Park. I've communicated this with the agent, and the agent has informed me that this easement will not pose a problem to the application, and that the sewer in question could be moved if necessary, and they're willing to do that. So it shouldn't affect the judgment we make. So moving on to the site, the site is 27 Pounds Park Road. It's a 2-bed semi-detached property on a street characterised by such dwellings which are arranged in pairs. They're all modestly sized family homes. There's a sense of uniformity in the street, and we visited the site last week on a site visit, and I'm sure everyone who was there will have noted the symmetry as we walk down the street and the general uniformity of the pairs of houses. Here's the site marked from above. So we can see that we're quite clearly within the built form of Beer Alston. And here's the site in context. So the site we're looking at is the one on the right with the small porch to the front. Moving on to the proposal. So the proposal is for a large 2-storey side extension to the property. It measures 4.3 metres in width. And for context, that's against 5 metres to the existing dwelling. It's worth noting that the extension is recessed from the front elevation by 1 metre in accordance with guidelines, and the ridge is 0.4 metres lower, also in accordance with guidelines. The eaves are also lower at the rear of the property. It's worth noting that the horizontal ridge of the existing property, owing to its hip design, is only 1 metre in length, and that the new ridge, albeit slightly lower, is 4.3 metres in length. This gives officers reasons to have issue with its scale and its massing. Moving on to floor plans, you see that the footprint is increasing dramatically by approximately 80%, although at first floor, due to the way the roof slopes, the usable footprint is, the usable floor space is increased by slightly less, but it still totals approximately 70%. Moving on to the wider street. The wider street scene shows a symmetry. I've included 3 examples of pairs of houses. These are the 3 pairs closest to the proposal site, and you'll notice that each one is very symmetrical, and we have no side extensions shown on the street. Councillors who walked around the street with me last Wednesday on a very, very gloomy day would have noted this was the case all the way down the street, right until the bottom of the street. We have had our attention drawn to a site within Beer Alston. That site is 38 Locker Ridge Road, which is nearby to the bottom of this street, where an extension has been granted that is similar to the proposal. Officers have noted that extension in their deliberations, and officers consider that it is not irrelevant to this case because it dates to before the joint local plan, dates back to 2016. The site is also characterised, it's also a corner plot, so it's different to the site that we're looking at. And there was an existing garage on the site, and the built form of the extension largely takes the footprint of the existing garage. So for that reason, officers have discounted that as a precedent in this case. So in summary, officers note that side extensions are not part of the existing street scene. Officers take issue with the size, scale and massing of the extension and consider that it is not subordinate and it reduces the primacy of the host dwelling. It therefore conflicts with JLP policy Dev 20 and it's contrary to SPD paragraphs 13.37 to 13.39.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Members of the committee, have you got any questions for the planning officer at this stage? Councillor Guthrie.
Just to be clear on the extension build, the proposed extension build, is it definite that they're going to be using the granite cladding as is the original dwelling?
No, the extension is largely in render, although there is some render on the existing property to the porch.
Councillor Moody.
Just for clarification, the size of the proposal is 80 or 70%, whether it's ground floor or top floor. Can you hear me all right? Okay. I just wanted to know what percentage is the limit beyond which we start creating problems with development under the JLP?
So in this location, this is a tier 2 settlement. We don't have a definitive limit on the size increase. The paragraph 13.39 of the SPD talks about the width being clearly subordinate to the width of the existing property. So in this case, the width of the extension is 4.3 metres. The width of the existing property is 5 metres. So that's clearly less, but it's not less by a lot. So the guidance around there is roughly half the original width, which would be acceptable.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for that. We have 3 registered speakers. The first, Mrs. Hall is going to read out a statement on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Giles, who understand are the applicants. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for hearing our case. Our growing family is crammed into an undersized 2-bedroom house. We both work